Happy New Year! Welcome back to our Wednesday afternoon broadcasts. I'm Heidi Priebe.
And I'm Denzel Mensah.
And we're coming at you a little bit late today. But we have a topic that's very timely, so we're really excited to talk about it because it's a new year and a lot of you are probably setting resolutions and thinking about what you want out of 2019. So we decided it would be cool to talk about personality type and goal setting and how those things kind of relate to each other, and maybe how to optimize what you get out of the goals that you set based on your personality type.
Right. And so we're going to try and go through all 16 today. So we're going to try and give maybe 3 to 4 minutes for each type. We'll try to.
Our goal is to be concise.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have, which temperament should we start with?
I think we should start with SPs because I think that we have the least amount of SPs who tend to tune in. So while we wait for more people to get on here, maybe we should start with ISTP, ESTP, because I feel like we have the least amount of them tuning in today probably.
Yeah.
They're off actually doing things.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good then. All right. Well, then we can start with the ISTP. So, in my opinion, an ISTP's goal for this year, ideally, that I would probably recommend is getting more into your body. Getting out there more to explore different things. So you guys are really good. ISTPs often have a very high ability on looking at things analytically and understanding how things work in a systematic form. And they're, the sharp TI that they have, they have very rigorous principles that they can adhere to and everything. And I believe that that's most sharpened once they give that TI more boundaries to be able to work with. And so rather than just sticking to maybe your what you already do, try and expand your horizon with things that you could possibly be doing. So and this includes a lot of physical activity. So yeah, in my opinion, I think that the ISTP will have their best bet with trying to get out there more, and that'll also help out with being able to connect more with other people. So if you're really good with certain sports where it doesn't really require as many people, try and get engaged in a team sport maybe. So basketball or something. That way you're kind of also forcing your FE, your inferior FE, to be tapped into through your auxiliary SE. So you're still able to have fun in a more natural way, but you're also not really forcing a connection. You're just hey, I'm getting to have fun playing basketball, or I'm getting to have fun, doing whatever event, but I'm also in the process meeting new people. And in meeting these new people and all of that, you get to further learn more about yourself. You get to learn more about the things that they believe, and you get to further expand your skill set. So that's essentially what I would give.
Yeah, I think that's not only good advice for what goals to set, but how to follow through on those goals. Because I think with the ISTP, you're already naturally so good at your dominant function because you spend most of your time there. That sometimes it can almost be overkill when you're trying to work towards goals. So getting super focused on your TI and whatever system you're trying to figure out or master or whatever. Sometimes that can actually hold you back. So I think that the ISTP kind of works the most effectively when they're constantly being engaged with their environment. Not constantly, but very often. So having something different each day to do or to tackle or to figure out is invigorating for this type. ISTPs don't necessarily want to do the same thing day in and day out, even though that might be the comfortable and easy thing to do initially. I think if they're moving towards a goal or there's something that they want to achieve, the way to keep themselves kind of on the ball and working quickly is constantly bringing new things into their awareness so that their TI has new things to root through and understand and figure out. And I also think that engaging that auxiliary SE kind of keeps them on their toes, keeps them moving, because otherwise the routine is just going to get very boring.
Yeah.
So that doesn't even necessarily have to be like, it doesn't have to be like a social thing. It doesn't have to be whatever. But I think for the ISTP and in a broader context for all perceivers, working very consistently and steadily towards one end goal is going to get boring very quickly. And that's going to make you want to give up quickly. But I think like if there are ways to add variety into that goal and even add like kind of moments of, I don't know, I want to say like high pressure, like if there's a specific goal you're working towards. I feel like ISTPs kind of come alive when there's like a problem to be solved very quickly. So I think like putting yourself in more situations where that skill set is required is going to help you to build out that well-rounded use of both TI and SE. Because when you put those two functions together and they're both working effectively and in tandem, it's like this brilliant ability to solve problems on the spot, like absolutely unmatched by any other type in that specific domain, except obviously ESTPs who use the same two functions in the opposite order. But yeah, I think that the ISTP is going to need that variety and new stimuli in order to like stick with any goals that gets them.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And then even then to refer to the ESTP who has these functions like in reverse, the ESTP often has, it's kind of like the reverse problem or the reverse advice that we'd give. So it's like, well, I wouldn't even call it a problem, but a challenge. The ESTP is dabbling in so many different things oftentimes, and it would be advisable for this year to focus on just one thing, or not even one thing, my bad, but like just try and like hone in more on like a few more skill sets that you have and like try to like build skill in these certain areas. So like if you already have like such a wide horizon, then it's kind of hard to, you know, spread a whole, like it's kind of hard. I'm thinking of like bread, but it's kind of hard to like spread a little bit of butter on like a whole big piece of bread or something like that. But if you have like, you know, a smaller slice or something, you know, if you have like a smaller area, then you're able to apply what you already know, or you're able to like build up a lot more in that area. So the quote that comes to mind is "Jack of all trades, but master of none." Now we can debate how, you know, probable that like that quote really is, but in my opinion, I do think that the more you're able to focus on like fewer things, then the more time that you invest on those fewer things, and the stronger you'll become in those areas, and then you'll be able to master more of those areas. And I also encourage the ESTP to start thinking more about, you know, like what their own beliefs are as well. So like even like as thinkers, sometimes they can fall into just like, you know, going with the social trend at times and not really like honing into their own truth. And so sometimes it might be hard to be able to be like, you know, the tribe believes this, but internally I just don't like, that doesn't really make sense to me. So I encourage the ESTP to like really try and figure out like what makes sense to them. So after you've been dabbling so much in so many different areas, then take some time to reflect back, you know, and like think about what things have actually made sense to you, and what things would you actually like, what is your truth that you can hold on to, and you'll hold on to that even if the tribe seems to not be holding on to it. And then maybe in doing that, you'll find your own tribe who believes in that truth alongside you.
That was so effy. I love it. Like because maybe that is their tertiary function. So that was just like very good advice. But I'm like, I would never have thought to say any of that. So that was yeah, I think that the word that came to mind while you were talking about honing into that TI is just optimizing. So like the ESTP, they have this incredible capability in most areas. Like they are just kind of like machines when they're going after something, when they're trying to figure something out. They're really, really good at figuring out like how something needs to get done, how to do it now, how to like kind of just like bulldoze through things. But like you said, I think that like because they're so good at immediately assessing a situation and acting in response to it, that becomes a very easy way to move through their entire lives. But where this kind of superpower could come in for them is if they're able to take the things that they really enjoy or are naturally good at and find a way to absolutely like optimize that skill. And then apply it in new ways and apply it across more situations, because I think that's when you take your personality type from one that is good and has like good at execution and has a lot of potential, but doesn't necessarily always focus in the right areas, as opposed to being more of an active force, as opposed to just kind of like, no one would ever call the ESTP passive, but in the way that they live, sometimes it can be like, okay, here's what's happening, I'm just going to respond to it constantly because that's fun for them, as opposed to taking kind of a more active role and being like, okay, here's what I want to be responding to more often, here's how I want to hone those skills, and then applying it that way. So I think like that's where, again, like same with the ISTP, when they tap into both their TI and their SE, they become these incredibly capable people. And I think that even though they already naturally have this very deep focus, and I think the opposite is true for the ESTP. So they already have this extreme capability, but where they could really hone into more of their potential is by making sure that they're taking the time to assimilate what they're reacting to into a system that they have internally, and then using that as a way to kind of even figure out what their goals should be. Because if you're not tuning into your decision-making function, you don't necessarily know what you want. You're just kind of constantly exploring. But I think that once the ESTP is able to really get into their TI and understand how things work and where they want to focus, where they need to focus their energy and their attention, then they're able to start taking action on that and actively improving whichever areas of their life they want to improve.
Yeah, that was great. That was great put. That was very well put also. And I think then, so let's move on to the ESFP. It's also similar in that sense. And Heidi uses FI as an auxiliary function, so I think that that'll be like even better. But in my opinion, I think for the ESFP, kind of like the ESTP, like you're doing a lot, you're dabbling a lot and everything. I know a lot of ESFPs in my life, and a lot of goals that I would recommend to them is to take more time to just not do much. And because you guys are really great, like especially with that SETE like thing going on, like y'all are just so great at like being on the move, responding, and just like going out there to get it, but then very little time for reflection, or not even very little time, but you refuse to use the time for reflection. Instead, the time that you do have for reflection, you try to like busy it by doing something else. But I feel like if you find a way this year to actually hone in on more time for meditation and more time for reflection, more time to be able to ponder what your values are, to be able to ponder what actually is meaningful to you, all of the things that you're dabbling in, which ones make you feel most alive that you want to zone in on more? What does that mean to you? How do they make you feel? What do those things say about you as a person? When you're able to really dive into those types of thoughts, then I think that'll help a lot in the long run. And it'll help you like with your TE function also, with better focusing on which ones you should actually pursue and what you actually want to do that'll help you become most alive. So then when you're expending so much energy, it's not really like just tossing energy into a whole bunch of black holes, but rather you're able to focus on the things that will give you the best best reward that you put into it.
Yeah, I think that you're spot on with the idea that like ESFPs, they have, like ESTPs, they have so much going on. They're constantly like reacting to what's going on around them, and they really enjoy that, and that's great. Yeah. But I think the problem with that can be that if you don't develop that auxiliary FI, as soon as there's not something going on around you that's keeping you engaged or distracted, or when something that's going on around you is something that's negative, which happens in points of all of our lives, then when what you're going to be left with is kind of this void where you're like, okay, well, I haven't taken the time to figure out my values, or figure out what's kind of guiding me and what I want to be working towards. So then you're kind of left with this sense of panic, and it's like you need something to fill that immediately. And that's when you get into this kind of dangerous territory. But I think that if you're taking the time to deeply understand yourself, sit with your feelings, understand what your values are in life, it's going to really help keep you grounded and also help you know which goals to set for yourself. Because I think a problem with that ESFPs can have if they haven't developed their FI is just kind of going along with whichever external goals are available to them, and being like, okay, this is here, it's an option, so I'm just going to take it because I don't want to have to think about it and figure out what comes next for me. But that's not necessarily the most fulfilling path. The most fulfilling path would be figuring out what your values are, what you want to give to the world, and then working towards that as an independent agent. So I think that for ESFPs, like to figure out what you want and what you're going to contribute that's going to feel very, very meaningful for you. Like Denzel said, you do have to take that time to get in touch with your FI. And it's going to be uncomfortable. And that discomfort is going to be necessary and growing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's going to be very challenging, but it's definitely going to help out a lot in the long run. And then speaking of challenging, so then for the ISFP, once again, the reverse. I have an ISFP wife, and I have a few other ISFPs in my life, and they're usually very easygoing. They're very relaxed and, chill and everything. So I would encourage them to become a little bit more like the ESFP, in the sense that they're getting into their sensing function and they're getting more into action what they want. They usually have the reverse challenge where it's like, okay, we know what we like and we know what we want to hone in on. We just kind of don't really pursue it as aggressively. And I would encourage you to get out there and risk making mistakes. So with the ESFPs, what I've realized is that they're really good at throwing things at the wall until it sticks. So oftentimes they may not even really think about how calibrated it might be, but eventually something is going to stick. Now with the ISFPs, one thing that I've been continuously realizing is this fear of failure. If I jump into action, if I jump out and actually try and pursue my value and everything, then what if I fail? That's going to feel so bad to me. And they being FI dominant, it's going to be, it's very heavy on them. But the thing is, I think that the fear of the feeling of never trying and then thinking about how you probably could have succeeded, and because of never trying, you never got to actually obtain the life that you want. That's a way worse feeling. I don't have FI, but I would like to assume that that's a way worse feeling than actually trying and knowing okay, I wasn't able to do this, but at least now I know that I wasn't able to do this, or I have a better idea on how to do this. So I want to encourage ISFPs to get out there more, to actually I know that they're usually a little bit lower energy, but if they start honing in, okay, I know what I want to do. If they start just taking more risks, going out and trying these things, oftentimes you'd be surprised with how well you're actually able to do. And you'll even further see how much that you're your own worst critic. You're the one who's stopping yourself. And once you actually get there, then you'll see the reality of the situation is, oh, I'm actually a lot more skilled at this than I thought. Maybe I didn't get it the first or second time, but I got it a little bit more than I would have. My first failure was way better than I thought it was going to be. So yeah, hop into action and actually take more risks is what I would recommend for the ISFP.
Yeah, I think similar to the ISTP, just getting out there and having more experiences is also going to help pull more into your inner world. So there's a quote that I really like, that I think is just such a good example of FI dominance, which is, it goes a grain of salt in a glass of water, or a spoonful of salt in a glass of water it will ruin the whole experience, but a spoonful of salt in a lake goes completely undetected. So basically what that's saying is if there's something negative in your headspace, and that's one of the only things that's in there at the time, it's going to be horrible and it's going to ruin the whole like your whole experience. But if you have a very wide variety of things going on in your life, a wide variety of things to think about and mull over it and consider, you're not going to notice the negatives as much. And I think that something that FI dominant types get stuck in a lot of the time is when something bad happens, their initial response is to retreat and to kind of mull over it. And they forget that there's a world outside their heads that they can go engage with, and they can actually pull more positive things into their headspace. And I think that's something that's just very easy to forget as an FI dominant type. And I think that even if things aren't going bad for you, it's just healthy to have that wider range of experiences and things to think about as an FI user. So I think that really engaging your auxiliary function is very, very important for FI DOMs, because otherwise it's very easy for your mind to kind of become a bit of an echo chamber of just these like emotions and thoughts that you process and process and process and process and process, and it doesn't always go anywhere. So yeah, I think that having that auxiliary function activated is going to help you even figure out, like, it's going to help you figure out what your FI wants and then how to take action on that. Because if you only have a small kind of schema that you're working with in terms of like goals you could set for yourself or things you could try, like Denzel was saying, then you don't necessarily know what you want to pick because maybe you just don't have enough options. So I think a lot of the time, like, FI dominants can struggle with a lack of motivation. And I think where that comes from is the fact that, like, they're not exposing themselves enough to the world outside their minds. And I think that it's not that they're lazy. It's not that they're not capable of taking action on what they want to do. They very much are. I think it's more often just not feeling a drive to do something because they haven't tried enough things to know what really works for them. So I think that that's a really good goal for either ISFPs or INFPs, is just pulling more things into your life to avoid feeling either like stuck or like you're kind of over processing things.
Yeah. And I guess, for that, then I guess we can transition to the NFs and we can start with INFP. Just like what Heidi was saying, for INFPs, it's not the same like with the ISFP, like, like where maybe you'd be getting as much in your body, but it is the same as in you're still trying to expand that territory of FI. So, okay, these are the things that I like, sure, but especially having SI as your tertiary function, you could always like fall back into like what's familiar to you, and rather than expanding that territory using NE to be able to build more into it, you won't know if you actually like another thing on the menu until you actually go there and you try something different from what you've always been trying. And in the worst case scenario, you spent money on something to realize, okay, I don't like this on the menu, but now at least you know that you don't like it. So once again, it's more about like taking those risks and getting out there and, just really trying to like explore different things that will challenge your current worldview, your current emotional state, and your current identity, if you will, so that you can be able to like better know like who exactly you are. Expand who you are. Expand your internal world by getting more into your external world.
Yeah, I really like how you put that. Expand who you are. That's such an INFP, like, they would love that. Yeah, I think like a problem that INFPs have a lot of the time too is because they lead with this function that's very idealistic. But then unlike the ISFP, they don't have SC to kind of ground them in reality. So since their auxiliary function, NE, is also very idealistic when you combine it with FI, I think a lot of INFPs have a problem of picturing something in their heads to be really amazing and incredible, and then trying it for like one day and it doesn't immediately meet those expectations, and then being like, well, forget the whole thing because I don't feel the way I thought I would feel.
Yeah.
Often that's just because good things take time.
Yeah.
They take consistency, they take perseverance, and that's not to say that those aren't skills that the INFP has. It's just I think they don't always remember to use them. Like, I think that there can often be like a quick sense of disappointment if the thing that they're pursuing doesn't match up to their idea that they have in their head about it. So I think that like just remembering to be patient and consistent with the things that you know you want as an FI dominant type is very important. And trusting yourself enough to know that that is what you want and that you will continue with it if it's something that's really important and meaningful for you, is something that I think it's just important for INFPs to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Because generally, like, FI is pretty good at knowing what it wants, but I think that with INFPs, they can feel almost like they're challenging their own desires, because when they go out and try it, it doesn't live up to what's in their head, and then they can kind of get it caught in this loop of, well, what do I want? And then their safe place is to just retreat from everything. And I think that feels like the intuitive choice, but in reality, it's a lot healthier to keep engaging, keep trying, be patient, have persistence, and figure out how to do that in a way that is conducive to you having FI. So whether or not that's like waking up every morning and being like, okay, I'm starting this new job, I'm not getting, the rewards I want out of it yet, but like, I'm going to journal for a few minutes every morning or every evening about like what I'm grateful for within this opportunity. And like keeping yourself in check in that way and reminding yourself why you want the things you want, I think is going to go a long way to helping you achieve the goals you want.
Yeah. That was beautifully put. Love that. And I think that you should start off with the ENFP one.
Yeah, ENFPs, not crazy dissimilar, but kind of in the opposite order. So I think that a problem ENFPs can have is wanting to explore a lot of different avenues and not taking the time, similar to the ESFP, to really like sit down and figure out or listen to what they want. I think that ENFPs always kind of know what they want in their gut. But I think we don't always listen to that because we're so focused on all these exciting opportunities. So it's like, okay, I see how this could go. I see how this could go. I see how this could go. And we don't always take the time to reevaluate whether or not that's something that we actually want or that feels meaningful or that feels morally right to us. Because I think that we get so engaged, we get so much dopamine in our reward centers in our brains when we perceive a new opportunity or perceive something in our environment that we could like alter or explore, that we forget to check in with ourselves and say like, is this aligned with my values? Is this something I really want to move forward with? What might be the consequences of starting this and then failing at it, or starting this and then deciding I don't want to do it anymore? Because I do think that's another big problem ENFPs tend to have is to get so excited about something and be like, I'm going to make a huge commitment and this is going to be what I want forever. And then being like, oh, wait a minute, it's 6 months later and actually I don't feel like working on this project anymore or whatever. So figuring out how to, in the first place, know what you want and what feels meaningful to you. And then finding a process that you can stay continuously engaged with is really important, because I think that we really like the beginning of things. This is similar to ENTPs as well, but then we don't love the follow through most of the time. So finding a way to keep yourself continuously excited about the process of working towards your goals is going to be very, very, very important for any dominant types. So finding a way to continuously make your goals fresh and new and different is going to be really important when it comes to helping you actually achieve them.
Yeah, that's really good. I don't even think I have anything much more to add to that. I think that that'll, at the end of the day, that'll just help the ENFP to know who they are, which is the goal. I think that that's like the main goal, like to continue to find your identity, to continue to know who you are, what you stand for, what your values are, and then find that anchor to be able to root yourself in, so that no matter how far you explore, you'll always be able to know where home is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's beautifully put. And I guess since we're on NFs, then we can switch to the INFJ. So for the INFJ, I think they're like the ones that I coach the most. And what I found with them is that they really pride themselves. At least the ones that I've been coaching, a lot of them really pride themselves on how reserved they are, and like not really going out to like they're friendly people. But it takes a lot of energy for them to be able to engage with people oftentimes, and they prefer to just stay behind and ruminate and stuff like that. This is going to be challenging, as usually goals are that'll help you grow. But what I would encourage an INFJ to do is to actually find more people to engage with, to find more people to interact with. It's great that you guys spend a lot of times, like in your heads and like, even being detached and like observing people oftentimes. And you would think that, yeah, you glean a lot from that. But actually, I feel like there's not as much that you could be able to glean as much as you'd be able to if you were immersed in those people. If you're able to actually go and speak to them and spend less time maybe like speculating and actually more time engaging. So I would encourage an INFJ to like actually find more pools of people to be able to interact with and engage with. And then that doesn't mean don't have any type of reflection time. I mean, you are an NI dominant, so you need that. But you'll now have like more sources. You'll have a bigger pool to be able to allow your NI to process and feed on. And so, yeah, my goal that I would put out for you this year is to go out and meet new people. Go out and like and make intentional engagements, interactions in depth, and get to know them, and then that'll help you to have even richer and even more accurate, intuitive insights on relationships and dynamics and people in general, as well as yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting because INFJs are kind of this paradox in that they are all about having different perceptions. Like they love to be able to look at a situation from 800 different angles, but sometimes those perceptions you simply can't get to on your own because you can't see through someone else's eyes, even if it feels like you can. Like I think that INFJs can hold themselves back by wanting new perspectives, but being so comfortable in their NI world that they don't want to go out and engage that FE and get those perspectives from other people. But I think that when they do, it just makes that NI world that much richer because it has more to draw on and it has more information. So I think that you're spot on with the idea that putting yourself out there more, even if you don't feel like it, is going to just give you a lot more depth to the way that you understand the world. And that's very important to the INFJ. I think that if they are always just in their heads and they're comfortable in their NI world very quickly shrinks to a place that feels uncomfortable because they don't have enough information to go off, and that information gathering process often happens through using that FE. And I also think that INFJs need to use FE to understand what their goals are because they do understand themselves through the context of like where they fit in the world, where they fit in their social ecosystem. And it's impossible to figure that out if you're not engaging with your social ecosystem and figuring out where there is a vacuum that you could fill or like where your skills could be useful. And I think that the more they explore that, the stronger and stronger their sense of self is going to grow and their sense of purpose accordingly. And that's going to be able to help them set better goals, help them to have a lot more stamina to complete their goals, because if they know that other people are like depending on them, that's going to be very motivating for the INFJ. Yeah. So I think that making sure that you're staying connected to your social ecosystem is really going to help with follow through for this type.
Yeah. And then in the reverse, so ENFJ, like me, the goal is to always, like, I always say that my goal is quality over quantity in all things, especially relationships, which has an FE dominant. So we have like the opposite challenge of the INFJ, or the reverse challenge of the INFJ, where we want to connect with many people. So we have that wide pool of resource, but our problem usually is that we spend so much time engaging with people, so much time like meeting their needs or whatever, that we don't get time to actually self-reflect on seeing what connects all of these people on an abstract level. We don't oftentimes like allow all of these interactions to now like funnel together to create insights that'll help us even more when we go out to deal with these people. And so the goal that I'd put out for the ENFJ is to actually, you're still, just like the INFJ where I said that you still should be spending time to like process things and everything, for the ENFJ, you'll still be engaging with people, but but I would ask you to like, I would recommend that you shrink how often you might be engaging with people, not dramatically, unless if you're dramatically like not spending any time alone, but spend more time in self-reflection, and allowing insights to bubble up, and reflecting on interactions that you've had with people, things that they've told you, seeing what connects everybody, thinking about the perspectives that they've had, and then seeing how that matches to your own. And then that'll help you further be able to know what types of insights you can bring into the world yourself. And then when you go out and you interact with these people, not only will you have more energy because you found a center where you're able to interact with these people and you now have like quality relationships rather than a whole bunch of pennies, but you have more quarters, stuff like that. But you'll also be able to give more depth to the people that you're interacting with because you've taken the time to allow that to marinate within you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like ENFJs are naturally pretty goal oriented. They lead with an external judging process. But I think that exactly what you said, like taking time to really understand and have a vision for like what those goals are going to mean for you down the line. Or like if you're focusing your attention on a lot of things as an ENFJ or a lot of different people, like taking the time to withdraw and actually figure out like how do these things fit together, and like if I continue to do things in this way, like what's that going to look like down the line, and is that what I want it to look like down the line? That's just going to make you more capable of like optimizing again that goal setting process. So instead of like working towards things that are kind of like immediately triggering to your FE, you can actually work towards things that you know are very useful and worthwhile down the line. I think this also helps with not just being like a people pleaser. So not just kind of doing things because people are asking them of you. When you can take a step back and look at the bigger picture, you can realize like, okay, actually saying no to these things might be better for everyone in the bigger picture. Yeah. So it really helps with like discerning which goals are worthwhile and which steps need to be taken to really make it work like in the big picture.
Yeah. And then ESFJs, so moving on to the SJs, like that's similar thing. They're also usually like really good like with interacting with people and things, and they're more pragmatic with it. They're more grounded and they're more concrete with the way they do things. So oftentimes they're interacting with so many people, they also don't get time to themselves. And I would also recommend that they take time to like reflect over the course of their own life and like seeing and understanding like, okay, what types of things have worked in my life and what types of things have I experienced? What types of impressions do I have that'll be able to help pull me out into, oftentimes like they're kind of like tricky in my opinion, and Heidi, you might be able to like shed light on this, but like I've found that like SINE as a polarity, it almost makes them seem like they're like also dabbling in a lot of things, and sometimes they don't even know what they believe because they are so stuck with like what everybody else has already believed, and like, oh well, this has just like always worked. But I think that for the goal with that is to have like a healthy SINE, which one of the ESFJs that I know, I've been like helping her, or I've been telling her like, I think it's best to like these notions that you've had like growing up, like whether it has to do with religion or, whatever it might be, you should allow yourself to like kind of not fear what may happen, or not be too attached to those things, but allow your SI to expand. So it's almost like what we were telling the ISFP, but in a different way. I think that you'll be able to explain it better since you have that polarity in your.
Yeah, I was actually going to say something that I've noticed a lot with the ESFJ is because they are so in tune with the belief systems and with the like norms of the groups that they're a part of, and because they are so people focused, there can often be almost a sense of like a lack of trust in the self. So it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to adhere to these protocols. I'm going to go along with like what this group believes in and does, almost because there's like a distrust of their own SI if it's not well developed. So I think that taking the time to like really hone in on like what have I done over the course of my life that has been very successful for me? And how can I bring more of that into my life is going to be really helpful for the ESFJ, because I think that they're a type that's incredibly capable and incredibly organized, incredibly has this incredible ability to execute, but most of that is driven by the world around them, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's only a bad thing when they reach a point where they need to make a decision for themselves and they don't have a framework for doing that.
Yeah.
So like one that comes to mind is like Leslie Knope. Like
I was thinking of her, yeah.
like she's, you know, this kind of trope of an ESFJ. But anytime something needs to get done in the office, like she won't ask for help or delegate half the time. She'll just like sleep in her chair for 5 days in a row trying to get it done. Because she's not tuning into that SI. That will help her figure out how to do it in an effective way when she's not just trying to meet the demands of others. So I think that finding that ability to be grounded in your own capability without needing that validation all of the time is going to be really helpful for the ESFJ, because there will be times when you need to be able to trust and rely on your own judgment. And I think when you have a healthy mixture of SI and FE, then that comes way more naturally.
Yeah. And then, so switching then to the ISFJ, where they lead with SI and the auxiliary function is FE, it's almost similar in a sense with the INFJ, where my encouragement to you would be to go out and actually interact and engage with more people, especially because SI can become like very rooted in like what you're familiar with, you know, what you already know. Like, this has always worked for me. I don't want to risk, you know, going out and like something not working. But I think that it would be good to encourage you to get out of your comfort zone. I think that for SI users, like that's like probably the best advice often that I would probably give them personally. Like, the goal is to find a way to get out of your comfort zone. You have the anchor there, which is your SI. You kind of like usually like know like what you're already like doing, or like what you're already like good at, what type of impressions you already have. But if you get out of your comfort zone, you'll be able to create more territory for your SI to be able to expand upon. And so I highly encourage ISFJs to get out there more and to interact with more people and to engage with more people, and also voice your needs more often too. Like in relationships, oftentimes like you won't you because you don't want to bother people, or because you're afraid to interact with them, then I'll just do things myself. I'll just, you know, you'll put a lot of burden on yourself, when in reality you should be relying more on your resources, which happen to be people. People often tend to like you guys. You guys do so much for us and everything. And so I think that they'd be happy to be able to return the favor for you, oftentimes. So I would encourage you once again to like get out of your comfort zone, which may mean actually asking other people for help when you need it. And that'll be the best effective way to be able to do this.
Yeah, I think that's 100% spot on. Like, I think something that the ISFJ is prone to doing is like they find one thing that works and then they'll even do it past the point where it works. So it'll stop working and they'll keep just trying the same thing, hoping it'll start working again, which is how SI works. But I think that how you break that habit is by exposing yourself, like the INFJ again, to a lot of different people, a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different ways of doing things. And like Denzel said, use those people as a resource, because like, again, ISFJs do so much for people, and they often have a lot of people in their lives who are willing to do things for them. They just don't ask. So if you're looking to expand your comfort zone, if you're kind of feeling like you're stuck in a rut or you don't know where to go next, rely on the people you trust. And go to them for perspectives. Go to them to help you expand your territory. If you're afraid to like branch out in some way, but you know someone who can help you, use that person and lean on them a little bit. And that can kind of be a way to expand your comfort zone in a way that isn't totally scary and throwing you off balance. So don't underestimate the people in your life, because I think usually for the ISFJ, they have a lot more support and a lot more people who are willing to show up for them than they might realize.
Yes, absolutely. And then I think that you should start off with the ISTJ, actually. I'm gonna grab water real quick.
Yeah, so the ISTJ can kind of have a similar dynamic to the ISFJ, where it's like finding one thing that works and then doing it to the point where it doesn't necessarily work anymore. The difference is having TE, there's a little bit of a quicker realization that that thing is not working. But one thing that the ISTJ can get stuck in is rather than voicing that either like they need help or they need other people to kind of step up to the plate, they'll just kind of be like, okay, I'm going to do everything myself, and then I'm going to be really miserable about it. And I think that healthy TE is really good at delegation, and it's really good at understanding that you often need like a team to solve a problem. And I think that for ISTJs, tuning more into that and being more comfortable asking people to take over certain things, whether it's like workplace or like even in a relationship, like saying what they need in order for things to improve, is going to be a really, really healthy way to move forward. Because once you get an ISTJ who has tuned into their TE, you have an incredibly effective human being, like someone who can just implement incredible things and really has the follow through to achieve their goals, as long as they don't get stuck in that kind of trap of not wanting to delegate or to ask, and just kind of having that attitude of like, well, I'll just do it all myself.
Yeah, that's actually exactly what I was thinking too. I think that the ISTJs probably more than any other type, in my opinion, they're the kings and queens of I can do this myself. I don't need anybody else to do this, or I might need other people to do this, but they won't do it as well as I can.
Yeah,
and and I think that if you get more, if an ISTJ gets more into that, kind of like what we were telling with the ISFJ, like, hey, like rely on your resources. For ISTJ, definitely rely on your resources too, like with people and understanding what their skills are. Because just like Heidi said, like, you have a superpower of being able to delegate. Like, okay, this person's good at that. This person's good at that. You're able to actually like really make the dream work, with that type of teamwork effectiveness, and people respect you oftentimes because you're very competent. You're good at knowing what needs to be done in a very practical way that's going to be almost all the time surely done. And so I think that taking some time to like maybe like step away from pride that you might have, or like a disbelief in other people that they won't be able to do this as effectively as I can. Taking that step of faith, getting out of your comfort zone, and actually delegating, and those who can't probably do it as well, teach them, and give them that opportunity to get better at it, so that now you're taking more off of yourself and you're able to now focus more on the things that you should probably be doing. So instead of doing things in an autonomous manner, you're actually allowing yourself to integrate and delegate so that you can help other people, and like you can lead people into achieving a common goal. And then also with SI being their dominant function, I've seen that they tend to really become not only very comfortable in what they're doing, so they don't want to expand their territory. Well, this is what I've always done, like what else do I have to do now, But if you spend more time delegating, if you spend more time like dirtying your hands and like things that you probably didn't know, it's like, oh wow, I'm actually pretty good at this. And then you can even find different ways on how to do things that you're already used to. So once again, I would advise that goal to like step out of your comfort zone and really like push agendas in that manner, and just further expanding that SI territory of what you're used to. And don't be afraid to take risks, because I've also seen that they can be very afraid, like kind of like how you said, like, oh, I'm just going to be miserable about it, or they kind of like what I said with the ISFP, like, oh, well, what if it doesn't work? What if it doesn't work? It will work, and if it doesn't work, then you're very competent. You can find a way to make it work, or you can find somebody who can help you make it work. So yeah, that goal would be to like get out of your comfort zone, take risks, and actually be able to delegate these tasks to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the ESTJ. So leading with TE, we have same cognitive function, slightly different order. So I think that the ESTJ is very good at moving very quickly, setting a lot of goals, working towards them really consistently, really in like a very gung-ho way. I think that they don't always necessarily take the time, similar to the ESFJ, to kind of really assimilate, like, well, let me think about that actually. Uh, they are pretty good at understanding what works for them, I think, with the exception of sometimes they aren't great at recognizing what works for them in terms of dealing with other people. So I think that for the ESTJ, like they're very competent, they're very good at getting what they want, they're really good at goal setting, they're really good at achieving their goals. I don't think any of that is ever a problem for them.
Yeah.
Area where they could maybe optimize their skill set when it comes to goal setting is figuring out how to understand. So this is actually more tapping into their NE, but understand how they're coming across to other people and how other people are thinking is going to help them be more effective in their goals. Because I think a common trapping of TE dominance, which also applies to ENTJ, is that it assumes that everyone else is thinking the same way as they are because they think so logically.
Yeah.
So they don't necessarily understand intuitively that other people are valuing other ways of thinking. So they just kind of assume like, well, if this person isn't doing this job I assigned them to, it's because they're lazy or it's because whatever. They don't necessarily stop and consider like, does this person have the resources they need? Do they understand the task? How do they need to go about it? And I think that if they are able to slow down and take the time to understand other people's perspectives, they're going to be a much better delegator and a much better leader. And that's going to help them accomplish their goals a lot more.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that was actually perfectly said. Just understanding how you may come across toward other people, and then understanding that if you're able to understand that, you'll get the most results. You'll get better results. You'll get more effective results. So yeah, I have nothing else to add to that. Just the goal this year for ESTJs, recommended goal at least, is to try and understand how you're coming off to other people and trying to understand more other people in general. Like just like what Heidi said, like, do they have the resources? Are they not everybody is as competent as you are in certain things. So understand that and be willing to teach them if necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say moving over to the NTs, it's similar for ENTJs. They have a lot of kind of a similar, like very, very structured, very logical worldview. And when they haven't developed their NI enough, they don't necessarily understand that that's not the worldview under which everyone's operating. So I think what's really funny about ENTJs is you get a lot of ENTJs in like positions where they're doing like motivational speaking or something, because often, you know, they become like CEOs of companies or whatever. They found startups. That's what they like to do, right? And then I love watching like talks that ENTJs give, because what's interesting is I find that what can be lacking from their psyche is the understanding that what works for them doesn't work for everybody. So I think like they'll be very, very passionate about being like, I have a morning routine that optimizes my effectiveness. But not everyone would function best if they woke up at 4 a.m. That's how you function best. But that doesn't mean it is the path to success. It means your path to success.
Yeah.
So I think that what will help ENTJs with their goals, similar to the ESTJ, is just understanding that the energetic level on which you function and the way that you manage your energy is not the way to manage energy. It is your way. And it has made you very successful in the lane that you're in, but different people have different paths to success. And if you want to help those people get there, because I really do think that ENTJs make excellent coaches and mentors. They're kind of like these accidental coaches.
Yes.
And I think if you really do want to help people realize their potential in that way, or even make your team function more effectively, you have to be open to the idea that there are different routes toward getting to the same place, and that a different route is going to be equally as effective for a different person as your route is going to be for you.
Yes, exactly. And that, I feel like that even taps into their NI process, which is like the more that you'll get into the minds of other people, the more that you'll be able to understand like different perspectives and timelines and stuff like that. And the more you'll be able to know like how other people can make use of what they have to get to where they need. So you're great, as Heidi said, at making use of what you have and being able to get there, but not everybody has what you have. And so if you're able to find a way to be able to understand like what other people may be working with, and then helping them or coaching them, even like, okay, this is what you're working with, this is how you can use that to either obtain more to work with, or to use that to get to where you need to be anyway. And just understanding like how different people's timelines, there's different procedures to be able to get to a desired goal. If you're able to understand that, then I think that'll help a lot with the people in your company. That'll help a lot with the people in your relationships and stuff like that. Instead of thinking like, oh, they just don't work as hard as I do, or they're just not as competent as I am. A lot of that is true. We're not as always as competent as you
Yeah.
are. But oftentimes we're also just working with the different things. So if you're able to understand like what skill set they have instead, like, okay, let's look at what you're working with. All right, let me help you on expanding this. Then that'll do wonders for you this year and for the years to come.
Yeah, like it's like, okay, even if they're at 70% of your competency level, but they're like optimizing 30% of that potential. There's still so much untapped potential in that person that you can unlock if you find the right way of approaching how they work. So if you want your whole team functioning at 100%, you're going to have to take different routes for every person.
Yeah.
But your NI is good at figuring that out. So use it. It's a great resource.
Yeah, precisely. And then I guess speaking then of NI and going into the last three NTs, INTJ, I think that INTJs can make like the best visionaries, in my opinion, but oftentimes like it gets stuck in that, in my opinion. Like it's almost like the ISFP, where it's like the ISFP, they can like have like, I know exactly what I would love to do in an ideal world. And so then they don't really like do it. For the INTJ, from what I've seen, they're usually good. Like everybody uses their auxiliary to an extent, of course. So it's not like they're like lazy or something. They usually get things done and everything. But to optimize to their highest frequency, I feel like sometimes like they sleep on it. Like they have this very grand vision, but then they're afraid, almost like with the ISTJ again, like of failing. And so then they might not push it as much as they think it is. And that vision will just stay a vision. It won't become something that they actually try and execute. Or if they do try and execute it, they won't execute it as confidently and as heavily because they're afraid of that failure. And then that FI tertiary, they really don't like dealing with that. So it's like, dang, that feeling of failure really hurts. But I think, once again, like what I said with the ISTJ and the ISFPs, because they're kind of like a mixture, if you take that risk of getting out there and like, and delegating, like, also know that you don't have to do this by yourself. You have whatever goal, whatever vision that you have. If you're able to get into the mind of other people and help other people see how this can help them as well, they're going to be willing to hop on board, and then you can delegate tasks to them so you guys can all achieve this vision together. So you're not doing this alone. You can rely on your resources to execute this plan, and then you'll have a safety net so that if you're gonna fail, you have people to pick up not necessarily your slack, but to be able to lift you back up. So yeah, I think that my goal for you, for all the types so far, is just like get out of your comfort zone. But especially like for the INTJ, like bring this vision that you have into fruition. Don't be afraid of doing that, and don't be afraid of having other people in on this vision. Don't be like mine, because then your vision won't be able to reach its max potential. But if you have a few people who are able to see this vision and you're able to communicate that vision well enough to them, they'll be able to help you execute that vision to your even better than probably what you already planned.
I mean, and the other thing is like, I agree with that. I also think though, like turning immediately towards other people can be intimidating for the INTJ because often if they haven't developed their extroverted process, they don't always have the social skills off the bat. So I would say like start by looking at your resources that aren't necessarily people, but like courses you could take, or like even like institutions you could insert yourself into that will give you these tools that you need, to be able to grow those social skills to the point where you can enlist other people to your vision, But B, even just help you realize that like there are a lot of different avenues for execution that you might not have originally considered. Because I think, again, yeah, you have like, NI has a lot of really wonderful kind of lofty ideals that could really work and could really make a change, and often do when they're executed. But the problem is not necessarily knowing where to start in the real world as far as like giving your ideas legs. So I think that just making sure that you're engaging a lot with the world around you and the resources that you have available to you. I think this is one reason why INTJs tend to do very well in academic environments, because they find themselves in an ecosystem that is very conducive to their existing skill set, but it helps them to structure that skill set more and to take more action on it. So finding any avenue like that you can to help you structure those visions and figure out where you can execute them in the real world is going to be really helpful for bringing those goals into fruition. Because usually INTJs know what their goals are, but they don't necessarily know how to get there. The process of moving from where they want to be to where they are is unknown territory until they really learn to use that TE healthily.
That's good. Yeah. That's really good. Well, then to move on to the INTP, the biggest thing that I would give for them, the biggest goal that I'd recommend to them is, once again, get out of your comfort zone. For you, they're really good. Like the ISTP, they both lead with TI, so they're really good with like understanding, having like a specific logical process and everything, an understanding of the world, principles, stuff like that, thinking very systematically. But also like the INFP, they can fall to what's familiar with them rather than expanding more of that territory on what they know. So they're like so sure about something, and then they kind of like stick to these few things that they're super sure of. But the thing is, you could become super sure. You have the ability, the capability to become super sure of more than just three things. So yeah, you're really good at biology, chemistry, or you're really good at this certain area of philosophy. But I would encourage you to further expand this skill that you have, to further get out into the world, and especially also interact with other people. And that might be very challenging for you, once again, getting out of your comfort zone, but interact with them in the sense of allowing what you think to be right now to be scrutinized by other people. And often you guys are like looking for accuracy. So when you put it out there, it might be a little bit scary to tell people like, hey, this is what I think about things and all of that, especially if it's going against what maybe the tribe may be thinking, like if it's unconventional. However, if you allow maybe like some people in the tribe to help like refine that, or you might even surprise them and they might hop totally on board. So I think that allowing yourself to be able to like get out of your comfort zone in the way of like interacting with other people to help refine your thoughts, and getting out of your comfort zone is like not falling back to what is familiar, but expanding your knowledge in other areas of interest. That'll give you more potential in becoming the best version of yourself.
Yeah. I also think like something that I've really noticed in most NP types, but I think it's the most strongly in INTPs, traditional goal setting is just not going to work for you. It might, you can force yourself into it, but TE isn't something you value. So trying to like force yourself to set goals in the way that you're encouraged to by like other people who might have like higher external judging processes in their stacking, it's just not really going to work. So I think that if you have a goal you want to follow through on as an INTP, just find a way to fall in love with the process of pursuing that goal. Because the end goal, the external reward isn't going to be motivating for you, because that's not how your mind is oriented. But what will be motivating for you is if every single day you love the process of what you're working on. So I think that for INTPs and probably ISTPs in a similar extent, it's actually less important to figure out where you want to get to. It's most important to figure out what your vehicle of transportation is going to be, and how you're going to make that trip as enjoyable as possible. Because INTPs are so good at analyzing and figuring things out and understanding systems. And that's what's going to be motivating for them if they can wake up every morning and know that they're engaging with something that they're enjoying, as opposed to thinking about like, oh, what's my end goal? Because that's just not, that's not exciting for them. So it's going to flop pretty quickly if they're trying to set goals in that way.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. My INTP clients, they usually don't really have an end goal type of thing. So, yeah, that's actually really good advice. That's a really good goal, I guess, for them to pretty much not really have like an end goal focus in that sense. What would you say then for the last type, the ENTP, since you share the same dominant function as they do?
Yeah, I think like ENTPs have a similar situation with ENFPs where they get so excited by opportunities. They're so good at picking out things that the world needs. Like, here's this vacuum we're not being filled. They're very future focused. They're very much like, okay, they're very perceptive at seeing things that could exist that don't yet exist. But they can get so excited by those ideas, and then I find often they'll move right to their FE. So they'll be like, okay, I have this awesome idea that I'm going to enlist all these people to like help me like bring it to fruition. And that's great. And they're very action oriented. But at the same time, they don't necessarily have that. They're not as in touch with that refinement process that TI would give them as they could be. So they don't necessarily optimize those visions that they have because they're not in touch with how exactly it's going to work. They just get really excited about it and start charging ahead with it. And I think that taking the time to make sure that they're exploring all possible angles of this thing and looking at it from a bunch of different perspectives and like figuring out logistically how is this going to work, just taking more time in that process is really going to help them be more effective.
Yeah, I agree with that actually. Refining is the best thing for that. Like really refining your what you believe, especially. So kind of like what I said with the ESTP as well. Like finding what your truth is. ENTPs, like they're able, like the ones that I know at least, and the ones that I've like watched on TV, they're great at just exploring like different concepts and like like thinking about like what do I think about polygamy or like things that may seem like very like off color. And I have such great conversations with them, especially as an FE dominant, because it's like a lot of these things are unconventional ways of thinking, unconventional ways of like living, and etc. But then when they really like find ways like, okay, this is what I just believe in an objective, or this is just what makes sense to me, even though maybe like the tribe may not like see it in that way. Just like what I said with the ESTP, it's like being like very firm with what you think. So I think like the best example that I've actually like seen that I really admire is Antonia Dodge, who she said one of the most challenging things that she's ever done, and she puts this on her podcast and everything. So I don't think that she'd like be like against me like saying it, but like she said one of the most challenging things that she's ever done is pretty much like leaving the religion of her youth because like she didn't believe in it anymore. Like she didn't believe that like she didn't believe in the belief system that they all upheld. And now it came to the TI, okay, this is what I believe, and not everybody else believes it in my tribe, so I might lose my tribe. Do I hold on to that, what's true to me, or do I sacrifice this to stick with, the tribe and, kind of like not really stick to my own truth? And she chose to go with her truth, and that came, hopefully other ENTPs don't have to deal with something like this, but that came with the sacrifice of that tribe and everything, which was unfortunate. But like what I said earlier with the ESTP, now she's able to find people who do believe in things that she believes and helps her find even more of the thoughts that she believes now. And so oftentimes it's good to be able to like unlatch yourself from the tribe and hone in on what you really believe, what makes sense to you. And then in doing that, you may lose some people, but then you'll also gain more people who will go with you throughout the long run.
Yeah, I completely agree with all that.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, we're running out of time / we're over time, but
we didn't do this last week anyway, so
true. Yeah. But yeah, talk to us in the comments. Let us know what your New Year's resolutions are. If you have any, how you plan on going about them. If you have any thoughts on what we've said, drop them in the comments. And also let us know what you want to see more of in the coming weeks.
Yeah. God bless.
Awesome. Happy New Year, everyone. We'll see you next week.
I'm David Bowder, CEO of SPASIGMA. Every day, each of us is surrounded by a great diversity of people, and indeed, personalities. Some people we find it very easy to relate to. Others, not so much so. Our program exists to help you make sense of your own personality, as well as the diverse personalities around you, to help you improve both your personal and professional lives. Shakespeare said, "To thine own self be true." We'll teach you to understand how to reach the diverse personalities around you, to communicate with them in a way that integrates who you are with who they are. So enough talk about all this. Welcome to SPASIGMA's Personality Quotient PQ program. Enjoy the journey.